I'm Mercedes Chacón Vance, a senior partner at Whitkeefer, and I'd like to welcome you and our panelists to today's podcast, Hiring Development Teams and Working Remotely in the COVID-19 Era. I'll be moderating this discussion with my colleague, Greg Duyck, a principal at Whitkeefer. And in a couple of minutes, I'll introduce you to our two panelists. First, I want to tell you how this podcast came to be. Over the summer, Greg and I led 2 webinars for advancement professionals focused on navigating your advancement career and managing your advancement teams during the COVID-19 era. We asked attendees for their questions beforehand and during the webinars about the topics. The response was overwhelming. It was clear to us that there is a big appetite for information on best practices and personal experiences related to managing higher education advancement shops in the middle of a pandemic. We reviewed the questions. We picked the topic you were interested in as a profession. We selected the best questions related to the topic, added a couple of our own, and then went out to find 2 great professionals to discuss them with. Both of our panelists are outstanding advancement executives with great insights to share. Let me introduce our panelists. First, we've got Kelly Kerner. Kelly is currently at the University of Georgia, and he is the Vice President for Development and Kelly joined the University of Georgia in July of 2014 as their Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations. In his role as Vice President, Kelly is responsible for managing the university's advancement programs, which includes fundraising, alumni relations, financial and fundraising support services, donor relations and stewardship, special events, and career counseling. Before joining UGA, Kelly spent more than 2 decades in higher education development at Bowdoin College, Bates College, Middlebury College, and at the University of Portland. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado Boulder. Kathi Dantley Warren is the Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations at Rice University. Prior to her promotion in July of 2019, she was Associate Vice President for Development at Rice. In this role, she was responsible for the day-to-day operations of individual fundraising programs and also oversaw various departments within the Department of Alumni Relations Division. Before going to Houston, Kathi was at Duke University's Duke Cancer Institute as their Senior Executive Director of Development. And before that, she was the Assistant Dean for Alumni Affairs and Development at Cornell University's College of Engineering. Kathi earned a master's in cell and molecular biology and microbiology from Duke and a bachelor's in biology from Hampton University. We're excited to have both of you here, and thanks again for joining us. Let's get started. So we want to start today's conversation around a few topics. One in particular is working remotely and onboarding new hires remotely. Kathi, I know you've recently hired some new team members, so maybe we'll start with you today and then let Kelly chime in after. So the first question is, when you're hiring staff right now, what are your worries about doing this remotely? And thinking about candidates, how do they stand out or mitigate these concerns that you might have or they might have navigating this and being part of this process, remotely interviewing and remotely onboarding in the remote world?
Thank you, Mercedes, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. So we have, as like many institutions, we have been under a hiring freeze, but we have had some folks who have been hired and have been onboarded, and we currently are working on a search, as you know, for an assistant vice president. So one of my key senior leadership positions. It's, my biggest concerns are whether you're recruiting someone in this environment or any other is, how they're going to come in and enhance or augment the current working culture, really make connections to and build a collaborative work environment with the team members. And in particular, at a place like Rice, which is, it's not a huge institution. There are about 4,000 undergrads, 3,000 grad students. There's 7 colleges and schools rather. And so, really, this is a smaller community of constituents. There's a lot of alumni nearby. So just knowing how people are going to connect and integrate into that community is huge. We have traditionally not hired people to positions who have lived outside of Houston and then worked for development alumni relations. We do have a few folks who were hired and have, after many years of working with us, have gone on to live remotely. So just how are they going to connect to the community? So, as in this environment, just on its base, when we're having the initial conversations, the energy and the engagement that people are able to bring to a Zoom call, which is kind of, that's a no-brainer, but I think it's even more critical that when you're communicating with them, that you have that sense of ease, you have that sense that people connect, in that video environment, that they're savvy, that they're comfortable. And we have seen many examples of people who just do not know how to communicate in this two-dimensional environment. And so that really, gives you so much more pause that they would be successful if that's how they're going to come into your organization. I think individuals who've been at organizations who do have people working in various places and who can, articulately, describe how they've managed, if they have actually managed those people or if they have engaged with those people remotely. Individuals from larger shops who've had people, far afield, and how they have communicated with them and worked with them and can, in a concrete fashion, describe how those relationships have been, managed and how they've executed on things that they've done in that environment. So those are two critical things that make candidates stand out. And, we have hired folks who have started completely remotely. We have not hired anyone where the whole process has been remote thus far in our division, but we are headed towards that path. And so this is even more critical. We had recently, prior to the start of everyone working remote, we had been looking at and had been revising our onboarding practices. And I was just telling another colleague from another institution today how glad I was that we had done that, because when we've onboarded people, we've been able to kind of put them through the same paces and give them that starting point that even though it's done virtually, they have the similar experience. So that gives me confidence that we bring people in, they'll have a uniformity of experience. And the other thing that we have done, which may be an answer to a future question, but we've also enhanced the virtual ways that we keep our community of folks within our advancement shop connected. And so, using those to help people plug in as well, in addition to the basic onboarding activity, has really been helpful to us. So it gives us a sense of confidence that, we can hire the right people and that we can successfully onboard them. And so the people that we have hired, who, again, we haven't, we have not hired anybody completely remotely, but we have started people completely remotely. And we have gotten some feedback from that first crop of people. And it's been really positive. We've had a lot of those folks tell us that they have felt like they have been integrated effectively into our community, and that they, despite the limitations, they feel part of the Rice community, and in particular, the advancement division as well.
Mercedes, can I ask just a quick follow-up?
Yes.
If you don't mind. Kathi, you had mentioned you brought in what it sounds like additional technological tools to help folks feel more connected to the community. What specific things did you implement that really helped that helped enhance those connections for new folks?
Well, more than the technical, I mean, we use Zoom, we use Cisco WebEx and the tools that it provides, and we also we have been using Slack, and some of the departments within our division are more adroit at using Slack than others, and so those were good baselines. But the WebEx has been particularly helpful. Now you see sort of the entire community is active on the chat platforms there, and they're communicating and calling and setting up quick ad hoc meetings that way. But the other things we've done have only been supported by technology. They haven't been new technologies we specifically brought on to do, but just we've been really intentional about internal engagement activities for our team. So, how we are providing social engagement opportunities, how we're doing trainings about certain things, mixing like some things that are training, like training for a database that we just switched to a couple of years ago, mixing those in with like, we do some of that over in a sort of happy hour format, which of course you don't have to bring you know, a beverage too, but that's sort of like the idea is it's a little bit less formal. It's sort of at the end of the workday. We have meditations, we have kind of, you know, safe space gatherings, we have book clubs, there's all kinds of groups that have grown up. There's, you know, folks who are sharing recipes. So these kinds of things and these kind of, you know, different communication, you know, kind of micro groups have grown up to support the larger division and have helped create some little, you know, mini aggregates of people that is substituting now for the natural, organic way that people would be communicating if we were face to face. So we've just, again, taken advantage of some of the things that the Zooms and the WebExes and the Slacks do offer to just facilitate those things, but make sure we're intentional that this is about our internal team engagement. And, you know, we feel like we have enough of those things, but yet not too much, so that we provide a little bit of something for everybody to keep people connected.
Great. Kelly, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll try to go quickly. Just Kathi said it so well and brought up so many great points. It's hard to emphasize that enough. But you know, I'll say a couple of things. One is in the hiring process, it's really become clear to us that we have to work harder. We have to do more preparation. We have to understand better who it is that we're going to be interviewing. And so I think we put in arguably more time on the front end than maybe we ever have, because I do think even though some people can be really good at Zoom, sometimes that's a detriment because they may be really good at Zoom, but not really good. And vice versa. Somebody could be terrible on Zoom and yet terrific. So, you know, I think we read a lot of things into that. One is how much did they prepare? So we get to understand about their level of preparation and how they think about the interview process, and how's that going to translate into their work as a potential member of your community. It also gives us the opportunity to probe on some things we might not have otherwise. And we do a lot more, I would say, background checks that are maybe off book, just because it's so hard, I think, to determine who you're really talking to on Zoom. I can tell you from my own personal experience, I've been really good on Zoom at times. I've been really bad on Zoom at times. And those bad times, I'm really glad I've, you know, not been in a situation where it would have meant a lot. But what I find is I have to put a ton of energy into my work when I'm doing Zoom calls. And so we're just looking for that. We're looking for what kind of energy are they putting into it and what kind of preparation. The other piece on this is the onboarding piece. And we have a very deliberate onboarding process. We call it the 5-5-5. And really it's an intensive program that literally lasts 5 months. And each of the fives pertains to 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months. And trying to do that virtually is a challenge. But I would say, again, we're working harder than we've ever worked to try to present that new employee to our family, to our environment, to our culture in a way that they can get a sense for what it's really all about. And then the final thing I say is that one of the advantages of this technological boom that we're all riding on right now is our ability to put meetings together that we weren't putting together easily before. So if a new employee starts here and it might have taken me 3 weeks to get in front of them one-on-one, now I might be in front of them on day 3. It just has provided this opportunity to more easily intersect with people. And we've been doing that in a lot of different ways. And we've brought trustees into the conversations through that process. And we've used video extensively, like everybody has. I know we're not unique in this. I've done, gosh, I wouldn't even be able to count at this point, but literally dozens and dozens of thank you videos that I've done to communicate with the team and just say, this is what I've heard recently. I'm not getting to see you frequently. I'm not getting to see you in person, but here's what I heard in this meeting the other day, and this is what I think it means. And so I've done literally dozens of those. And I think, again, I never would have done that before, but it's so easy to do that and then deliver it across a really broad spectrum of people. So positives from that standpoint, but the negatives from my perspective, I just don't think you can replace the in-person conversations.
Do you think that your the morale of your teams, how has the remote connections, how is that affecting your team's morale? Are you seeing, you know, Kathi, you're talking about almost well-being and health. Do you feel like you've put that in because you've seen a morale issue? Where are you? That's a huge topic right now with regard to the remote learners. Where are you guys seeing that with your team?
Well, so those things existed, and we were actually trying to make them more intentional before. They were a little too kind of like the fun committee had taken charge of things, and we want people to be socially supported, but at the same time, you know, it needs to be you know, it's still a professional environment. So we had been working to be more deliberate and thoughtful about, you know, again, engagement within, just like in an advancement organization, you don't want to, we're not just throwing parties, right? We're thinking about how we're engaging people so that they can stay connected and have a, you know, vital experience. And so that's how we were already rethinking some of those activities. So that was timely as well. But yes, now those are, you know, helping with general health and wellness of the community in this challenging time. But we're also doing, we also are continuing with larger organizational culture building and professional development opportunities for the entire team too. And kind of those we were in a little limbo about because we weren't sure how long we were going to be remote, you know, things we would normally do in person. We don't just want to do remote if we're going to get to do them in person soon. Now that we've all been living this way for 9 months, we've just taken a turn and we are looking at, you know, how will our next round of, you know, of a full division, you know, set of trainings, a full division set of, you know, of our retreats and our day long, you know, working meetings, how are we going to do those remotely? So yes, some of it is about the wellness, but a lot of it is about we've got to continue to advance in this environment. And this is now the constraint that we're under. So in addition to supporting the wellness, we're going to really look at transforming how we do the organizational development, you know, culture building things that we do, you know, team building, you know, team advancement things that we do, and just doing them in a virtual capacity. So so there's both things that are going on there.
Yeah, I think the morale piece is real. I mean, I think if you look around the world, everybody's tired of Zoom. Everybody's tired of wearing a mask. Everybody's tired of socially distancing. We are human beings who appreciate interaction with other human beings, and it's something that we, you know, I don't know. I think probably we all recognized pretty quickly how difficult this environment was going to be, and so we have done a lot of things where we've tried to make it light at times when it felt like it was pretty heavy. We put together a giant Spotify playlist that we asked people to submit their favorite song that they put on when they really want to get hyped up or they want to be happy. So we've got this like 250, 300 song playlist that we created. That's our COVID, I think we called it our COVID spring playlist or something like that. We've done things like that, podcasts, we've shared podcasts. We've used, Kathi, I think you said you guys are using WebEx. We've been using Microsoft Teams a lot the same way, with all kinds of different chat strings, and some of them are about just personal stuff, and some of them are professional development, and some of them are just plain old work. And that's been a great platform to kind of keep us all together. And as you know, you can use video on there quickly and easily. So we've recognized that we're in a new world. And while I do believe we're going to come out of it and we are going to go back to an almost entirely in-person world, we're recognizing that much of what we're doing now, we will continue to do in some way, shape, or form, even after the shackles are taken off of us on this virus. So we just got to keep persevering with our team, and we make a point of that frequently in our meetings. We remind people that we have to pay attention to each other, and if we see somebody dragging, what can we do to help them, and let's share that information so that other people understand and can be part of uplifting those folks. But it's a balance, and it's like Kathi said, you still got to be a professional organization and be effective and get things done. But we've got this extra piece of the world's not normal, and we have to try to keep it as normal as possible in our environment.
Great, thanks. That was really good dialogue around some really important issues about remote working and remote onboarding that I think people are really wondering how leaders are navigating. So thank you. Greg, I'll pass it on to you for the next question.
Thanks, Mercedes. Appreciate it. First of all, I wanted to thank both of you for joining us personally. It means a lot. Clearly, you're busy and you've got things going on 24/7 these days. So it's really wonderful that you're able to take this time and talk with us about some important issues. Being the recovering fundraiser that I am, I'm going to dig in a little more into the details around fundraising in general and managing fundraisers. So my question is, do you think academic institutions, and more specifically, are you in your shops, do you think they'll be more flexible? Have you been more flexible in allowing principal and major gift officers to work quasi remotely post-COVID? I mean, obviously you have to now, but do you think you will be more flexible after we have a vaccine and we go back to how things were before? And if so, how will institutions in general manage them, support them, and hold them accountable while working remotely? Kelly, you want to kick it off this time?
Sure. Just coincidentally, before COVID hit, we had moved into a new space, and the space was limited in some way, shape, and form. It was a much better space for us, but it had limited locations for people to sit. And we had begun a trial of seeing if we could have our traveling fundraisers work primarily remotely. And that started about, almost a year before COVID started. But we felt it was a trial, and we were going to just kind of see how it went, see if we were still having the same productivity, see what the atmosphere was with the team. And we were getting to an inflection point where we were going to have to make a decision on that. Well, moving into this space helped us decide. And we decided that we'd seen enough that was positive. So we were going to continue with it. The space wouldn't allow us to have all these fundraisers sitting here. So the premise is, obviously, if you're a fundraiser, you need to be out on the road. You need to be out seeing people. So we went to the hoteling concept with our workstations here, and it seemed to be working really well. Well, now we go into COVID, and it's times 10 with that, because now virtually nobody was around. I think we'll continue with it to a certain extent. I think that our regional fundraisers, who are the ones who travel the most, I think they will have access to a place here in our space, but they won't own it. There will be an expectation that they're here on campus, one day a week, or when there's a team meeting, but the expectation won't be for them to be sitting at a desk with a nameplate on it, and we should see them there every day, because that's just not their job description. So I think it's opened our eyes a little bit to our ability as an overall organization to do telework. But I've told my team recently that even though it doesn't feel like it's in the near future, there is a future out there when we will be back in person. And my expectation is that we will all be back here to the extent that our jobs allow. And the ones who will be a little bit of a different case are those who are traveling fundraisers, and they'll have a more of a hotel situation. But so we'll have a sort of a hybrid situation moving forward. But honestly, I think people are mostly very much looking forward to being back in person and being part of a team where you see people on a day-to-day basis.
And it's very similar for us, actually. We had moved to an open concept building where there are very few offices about 2 years ago. We had also just this past year had implemented a policy around flexible work arrangements, and we were, offering it on a broader level where it made sense, or allowing flexibility, supervisors a little bit more flexibility. And wham, this happened. So what we're recognizing where there's efficiencies gained and where there haven't been, but by and large, it's definitely been to the positive. And so as we get past this time of COVID, I think coming back, we will be a much more flexible, working environment. We will, we may or may not now start thinking about, well, are we going to hire people who are actually based remotely, which is not something we had ever done before. So I think that may also inform, a change in that regard. But yeah, things are they're very, very different. We're still seeing, as I said, we're still seeing a lot of productivity in the teams, and they're so looking forward to getting back to being able to really engage and travel in a quote unquote normal way. But they are really starting to get back to being able to connect with people, even in a virtual setting, in a more robust way. So, it has been very enlightening as to what is possible.
Just a follow-up question. Did you, what management techniques, special management techniques are you both utilizing to support those remote workers? I mean, everybody's remote now, but more importantly, support those frontline fundraisers. And how are you holding them accountable? I'm curious, Kelly, since you'd started this trial beforehand, did you have to do anything special? Did you have to lay out any special, guardrails or outside boundaries or parameters for those particular folks in order to feel confident and comfortable and allowing them to work remotely?
I think that Kathi reminded me of something that I should have said. We actually had also begun placing fundraisers around the country. So we actually have 5 folks who are regional fundraisers who live outside of Athens, 4 outside of the state of Georgia. And we'd like to do more because the concept has been proven for us over the course of the last couple of years, where these folks have been living in LA, San Francisco, Nashville, New York. We feel like we have a really good model. And I think what makes it good, we're not unique, but I think what makes it good is that there's a real focus put on understanding the quality of the work that they're doing and not just getting dazzled by the numbers. And, all of us in fundraising have seen the fundraisers who can produce oh my gosh, look at how many visits that person did or how many contacts that person did. But then if you really drill down, you may not have quite the quality there that you want. And so we put a pretty rigorous process in of just analyzing where they are in any conversation with a prospect and how they're moving through the pipeline and so forth. And we've got a couple of mid-level managers whose job it is to really make sure and stay focused on that. And we've also teamed them with our prospect management team and researchers. So we really have a team of about 3 people who are paying attention to each individual fundraiser. Now, they're not each fundraiser has 3, but there's a team of 3 that pays attention to several fundraisers. And that's proven to be a really good way to approach it. And we are, I'm sure, like Kathi and like everybody else, we're counting things like substantial phone calls or Zoom calls as visits, but it has to be substantiated. And there's got to be detailed notes as to what was accomplished and what the next steps will be. So I think we're just looking more closely than ever at the data to make sure that, what's happening out there is really what's happening out there. And honestly, it goes back to the very first thing that we discussed, which was hiring. You have to hire the right people. And we've been very fortunate. We've hired fantastic people whose integrity is fantastic. And, you know, I feel very comfortable having folks away from campus because I know they're getting the work done.
Yeah, I would, you know, similar things in our shop. I mean, we've enhanced our prospect review process and tightened it up a bit and made sure there's more people at the table, the research team, the gift planning team, you know, in addition to not just the prospect manager themselves, but the supervisor, if they work closely with a certain school and prospects there, that school-based gift officer. So the prospect review activity, you know, and just, I think that's the biggest thing. So we know, as Kelly said, the quality of the interactions, the fact that moves are really happening. Of course, we also measure substantive moves, not, you know, quote unquote visits. And we see that there's actually activity towards, you know, really towards a gift, not just the hamster wheel activity, just kind of moving around in a circle. We're doing more so that there's more opportunities even outside of that for conversations about strategy, you know, with more people, you know, so that kind of bouncing ideas off of folks in a time when it's that much more challenging to kind of engage people, that there's more people in those kinds of conversations helping to think and brainstorm about that. So, you know, same deal by enhancing those kinds of activities. And like Kelly, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I've hired some of the staff, but there's a very conscientious and very trustworthy group of people who are already productive and successful. And so fortunately, we had that grounding of a track record to build on too. So, you know, they want to be productive. And so, and their integrity is high. So we had a really good foundation to build on.
So our next question, we had people on the webinars ask about kind of financial health, and I think they were wondering, you know, leaders such as yourself, how are you balancing the current financial constraints when trying to retain and recognize your highest performers and kind of your future leaders? And Kathi, you want to start with that one?
Sure. You know, in addition to being, of course, always fiscally responsible, it is also my, you know, stance from the outset that, you know, we could not cut off our nose to kind of spite our face. And like almost every place, you know, we had a budget cut. It was minor, all things considered, and we had a hiring freeze, but we still had flexibility. And so we made it clear that in addition to preserving, you know, existing team members where we could, we wanted to continue to, you know, support and reward the team because, you know, if this was a typical down financial year, economic downturn, there'd already be challenging morale. But in this environment, with the compounding of the impacts of the pandemic, we knew it would be even stiffer. And so to kind of further add insult to injury, when we still did have some flexibility, you know, I adopted the posture that, you know, that just wasn't prudent. So, you know, we did have and have had budget savings. We also had, you know, a bit of an investment in our team because we were ramping up to start a campaign. So we were in a pretty good financial situation from which to deal with the challenges to start with. So we did not then go back and sort of slash everything. We were doing certain trainings. We've been offering certain professional development. We can't do promotions. We can do exceptions to hire in certain places, but we can't do promotions. But we do have other ways that we can support and incent people, and we have continued to do that. You know, as I said, we've continued to do trainings. We are bringing in people from the outside to work with us on certain things from, as I said, organizational culture perspective. This is not a minor thing, so I'll mention it here too. But after the events that happened in May with the murder of George Floyd and all of the issues around racial and social injustice, we also launched a task force on diversity, equity, inclusion issues. So we've been working with people both inside of Rice, and we're just about to start working with people externally to help the group with those issues and address, not even address challenges that we had, but achieve some things that we believe we can achieve to improve upon our efforts within our advancement shop. And so all of those investments, I think, they're a net positive. I mean, we have a team who really feels continually supported. We've done surveys about how the team's morale and productivity is, and we're about to do our annual Gallup survey, which we participated in with a number of other institutions that just opened. The responses that we get from them are very strong. They continue to be very, very positive, where we've seen things that we knew we could work on, whether they were no cost or minor cost. We have tried to address those things. And we've done so with a lot of transparency, and I think that's been the key too. So despite the real constraints that we're under, which no one's under illusion that we aren't, you still have to invest in what's important to make the team thrive as best they can in this kind of environment. And so that's been what's guided the decisions that we've made. And fundamentally, for all of us, for the work that we do, for all of our institutions, we're one of a very few ways that those institutions are going to recover. The revenues that we're generating, we're part of the recovery. So so you can't be of two minds and make two different decisions and expect that you're going to recover as strongly as possible. So we've tried to make the wisest decisions possible in terms of how we have spent certain things, and I feel good about all of those decisions that we made, because I think they're still having a multiplier effect in terms of our productivity, our efficiency, and maintaining morale as best we can right now.
I would just add to that and I don't know what your budget situation was, Kathi, and ours, we had been going through a campaign, and I don't want to say that we had everything that we wanted, but it did feel like we were at a time in the history of the university and the foundation where the resources were being delivered in a timely fashion to us so that we could continue to build the team that we needed to have. And when this came along, we had a pretty drastic budget cut to the extent that we were going to have to make some decisions about, people and or operating budget. And, time will tell if this was the right thing for the university, but I decided that I felt my most valuable commodity was our team, our people. And so we really cut our operating budget significantly, drastically, to the point that there are a lot of things that we just can't do right now. But we're using technology as a way to get around that. So the serendipitousness of that is sort of interesting when I think about it. But we didn't eliminate a single position. I should say that differently. We didn't eliminate a single filled position. We eliminated 13, right off the top, 13 unfilled positions, and 6 others are in a hiring freeze that doesn't look like it's got a thaw on it anytime soon. So we're down effectively 20 positions. And that's interesting because it's forced us to really think differently about how we collaborate and how we work across our different boundaries. And what I've seen is, and the way that we couched it with folks was, look, we're going to have a different way of operating. We're going to have to work differently. We're going to have to work even more efficiently than we ever have. but I will do everything I can to keep from having to have somebody walk out the door. And my justification with my president was the long-term cost of that person walking out the door is so much greater than the near-term savings. It's hard to even reckon. So I was able to do that. I think it's the right thing. We'll find out. We'll look at fundraising numbers and compare them against the rest of the industry over the next 2 years. But we have the team we want. We've kept everybody, and we've done, at the expense of the operating budget. And I think it's going to be the right play, but who knows? We'll find out. Everything in this world we're in now seems like it's a new question every week. But that was the way we approached it. And I personally feel really good about the approach. But we'll have to wait and see what the outcomes are.
Kelly, how big is your team altogether?
Yeah, I have kind of a weird team, Kathi, because I have development alumni relations. I also have the career center, and I have the foundation, which is essentially our financial backbone. So when I put all those together, plus our fundraisers in the schools, colleges, and units, which we have 60% or so of the salary of the chief fundraiser in each school, college, and unit. We're about 260 approximately. So it's good sized team, but honestly, my long-term goal was to get us more like 350. But that's now, I don't know when that's going to happen.
Kelly, were you on trend to, if we hadn't gone into the COVID era, do you think you would have been able to get to that number or close to that number?
We were adding approximately, we had big ads early on in the campaign. When I first started at Georgia, we added as many as 10 or 12 positions a year for a number of years. But we were on a track to add 5 to 7 new positions each year from a combination of state and private funding. So it would have taken us a while to get there. We would have, fully staffed, we should have been at about 275 if we had all of those positions that we had to give up. But I think if you'd given me another 5 years, I think we might have gotten there.
Kathi, how big is your team at Rice?
So there are 148 positions. And when the freeze came, I think about 18 of them were frozen. We've gotten a budget influx, and we're in the process of doing a lot of hiring from the year prior. And then the freeze came. I think there are about 7 that are unfrozen, or thawed. I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah.
So there's like 130 people in seats. And then now these 7 open positions currently. So we're expecting to get some guidance about additional budget changes. We've been very fortunate. The university put in a freeze. We didn't have to give a significant amount of the budget back this past year, but we are expecting it in the coming year. But given the fact that we had gotten that influx, the investment for the campaign of positions and some operating budget, and given that we had so many open positions, we will be able to weather this a little bit more easily. But that doesn't mean that those positions that we'd asked for, of course, weren't critical as we were heading into a campaign. So we already run as a pretty lean enterprise in terms, based on the benchmarking that we've done. We know this. So we by no means were we, flush with people either. So we know that the decisions we make in the coming months as we enter the, the next budget planning cycle are going to be, very important to maintain that momentum. So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. But just like Kelly, our objective is to preserve the positions, the people in positions that we have, and preserve the momentum, because we are, planning, we're in the midst of a campaign in the silent phase. So we can't go backwards. And so we have to achieve as much efficiency as we can, but I think there's already a strong sense around the campus that we're not exactly there's not a lot of fat to cut to start with. So we will have to get more creative, and we, we'll have to make some choices that we certainly weren't anticipating making, I'm sure.
So building on this conversation, because I think it's a great foundation for another conversation, and kind of referring to Kelly's comments about the decisions you're making now and decisions you both are making now are going to have long-term implications for the university, for your own teams, for fundraising going forward. I'm curious to know what your goals have been. What goals did you set for this year, this fiscal year? How different are they from last fiscal year? And are you anticipating a decrease in fundraising performance for this fiscal year? I would assume the answer must be yes, but I'm hearing all kinds of different messages from leaders, from advancement leaders around the country. I'd be curious about your experience.
Kelly, you want to go first, or?
I'll jump in real quick. So we were on trend last year for about a $225 million year. We ended up at 175 last year. And we were fairly confident about that 225. So I think that was a realistic drop in what happened. When we set out for this year, my goal was to hit 175. I thought that would be a successful year to duplicate what we did last year. We actually are trending right now, and this is way, way early. So who knows? This is very foggy crystal ball. We're trending about 185 right now. But that's a trend in, what month are we? November. Talk to me in June. I can see a path to 185. I'll be thrilled if we do, but honestly, I'll be thrilled if we hit 175. So it's the best we can do with what we know, and it's really hard to project more clearly than that at this point.
And last year our goal was 160, and we were on target for that, and we were on target to be maybe a little bit ahead of our annual fund, which we do about $8 million a year. And then, the last quarter was just a non-quarter. And so the bottom fell out. So we ended up the year at like 117, I believe. And so in terms of this year's goal, our goal is actually it's 160 again, because those conversations, many of them have actually, they've picked up again in this year. And truthfully, there's been an uptick in plan giving activity and some other things that were kind of unexpected. And so, that's our goal this year is pretty robust, which I was actually a little bit surprised about after we started kind of mapping things out. Now that doesn't count if anyone's aware of the $100 million gift from the Welch Foundation. So really the goal is more like 260, but I'm sort of telling you that without that goal. So that gift happened in September. So
Congratulations, by the way, it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. That was really exciting. But it's one of those things, like Kelly said, it's like you look in this crystal ball and it's so surreal, because up is down, down is up. People who you think are not going to want to talk about something are talking about things. A lot of our folks with the highest capacity are, they've actually fared well. And I think in the gift planning realm, it has pushed some people, to think about some things that they hadn't been willing to think about before. So that's also given us a really good start off to this year. So just like Kelly, again, it's November, ask me how I feel in March or April, because, I think the worst part of this pandemic is sort of always having that feeling of like, what's the next shoe to drop? No matter what. And we always have it a little bit, I guess, in our world, because there's so much that's out of our control, but, maybe even more so now. But there are still a lot of people who are willing to pick up the phone and have some real discussions. And we also have a few things that are kind of like the lead up to our campaign that are happening, getting in the weeds a bit, I know, but it's a few challenges that actually are kind of spurring some interest. So we have some things going for us like that are helping us despite everything else. So, if we come back together in April, May, Kelly and I can tell you just how good we were at forecasting.
Yeah. And you could show us the scars too, right? How this
Exactly.
I was going to tell you a quick story that should make you feel better. I was having a conversation recently with one of your peers, Power 5 conference school, flagship public university in the middle of a campaign, hit their number, everything happened. They still hit their number by the end of last fiscal year, their original target for their goal, and are on target this year to even exceed the goal that they had. That's keeping them on pace. They're right smack dab in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar campaign. So I think it's out there, and I think Kathi, you make an excellent point, which is that excitement and that energy around a campaign as you move out of silent phase to public phase might really help to crystallize them. And you'll be able to capitalize, as we are, so many institutions and businesses across the country are getting capitalized on, hopefully, if this ends sometime soon, pent up demand in all kinds of ways. So it could actually be a great year for us. I do have one, hopefully you guys will hang on for the rest of the conversation, but I have one very specific follow-up that I had to ask the two of you. In thinking about your goals for this year, sounds like you both kind of lowered expectations a little bit, realistically, given what happened at the end of last year. How did that roll down into your frontline fundraisers? Did you lower your I forgot, what was the term you used, Kelly? The substantive contacts goal, that kind of thing. Did you lower their individual dollar goals? How did that impact individual fundraisers on your team?
Well, we build our goals out, maybe maybe everybody does this, I don't know, but we do something that I call a cold light of day assessment. So we ask every fundraiser to go through their prospect pool and literally give us, what do you really think? I know you're a fundraiser and you're positive and everything seems great, but what do you really think this person's going to do this year? So we get very, very conservative estimates from people, and then we build our goals based on those conservative estimates. So we don't even put a goal in play until all those conversations have been had with our fundraisers. That conversation actually came out to about 175, and we were willing to say, okay, well, let's just call it 175. The weird thing is we're tracking 20% behind right now where we were last year, but our projection is higher than what we ended up at. So what we're trying to figure out is, okay, if 20% behind last year's number and we were going to do 225, where does that put us in real life? Are we ahead of the game? Are we behind the game? And honestly, it's a numbers game. People are playing all the time with it. And I finally said to folks, because they want to make this crystal ball so clear. And I said, look, we're going through an election that may take weeks to get through, and at the end we have no idea what's going to happen in the world. So don't kill yourself trying to figure out what little dot and tittle we're going to come to on the total amount that we're going to end up with our projecting, but the numbers are just so strange. And it feels to me, we have this incredible pipeline of potential gifts. It feels like they're just waiting. We've got a lot of people who've said, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm just not ready to sign. And it feels like they're waiting, and they're waiting for what is that shoe that's going to drop. And so again,
they're waiting for clarity, right? They're waiting for clarity on a whole host of social and political and health issues. I mean, it's just incredible.
Right. And in our situation, the institution you mentioned, I can probably guess which one or one of a couple it is. The difference there for a place like that is their pipeline was so chock full, and they have such a long history of philanthropic support that we haven't had at Georgia. And we've really just begun in the last 10 years to come into that. So what they've got is a momentum that is enviable. And they've also got a constituency that's enviable, that I think will continue to go, because as Kathi said, there are people who are on the very wealthy end who have done really well through this. And so they're not slowing up. We just got to find those folks. But I'm seeing people kind of hold on things for now, and hopefully they'll pull the trigger at some point.
Yeah, so we our fiscal year is July 1 to June. We tend to goal set in late July or early August, and kind of call it at our first board meeting in September. And we do a conservative low and an optimistic high, and then kind of come in somewhere in the middle, just knowing how gift officers are. And this year, that number, based on, doing things like we always do them, was the 160 again, which I was very surprised at. And, we had a couple of things that had happened even while we were in the goal setting process that gave us a sense, as I said, like, well, gift planning is up, and there's still some strong, conversations in the mix about some larger major gifts. And so it's, for right now, things seem to be moving along at a clip that bears out that, we're moving along at the right pace. And like Kelly said, the cold light of day, I really try to take a very realistic approach, even knowing, of course, that gift officers, they're optimistic if you ask them, are they a great gift officer? They're worried when you ask them to actually put their goals on paper. So you have to balance that out. But even with that, kind of checking and rechecking assumptions and trends. And I have a new person who's the associate VP who leads all the individual giving areas, which was my former job. She and I are in the, we came to the same conclusion about what that goal should really be. So we've put that on paper. We're working towards that plan. And, it's, so we're at, with the $100 million, we're at 153 right now. So, and I said the total goal is really 260. So it's, so we're ahead of where we were on pace last year to make the 160. So it seems to be moving in the right way at the right pace.
That's good. That's good.
So there you go.
So you guys, can you hang out with us? Because
Sure.
Mercedes saved the absolute best question for last. Do you have more time to talk with us a little bit longer?
Sure, but I guarantee you that my dogs will start barking because it's after 5 and they demand,
That's really quickly.
attention.
We just want to thank you for being really open about that, because I do
Yeah.
think that was that question about the fiscal year, your goals, how you are managing the goals of your fundraisers it came from a couple of prominent VPs that are sitting, and they wanted to know, and we didn't get to it the last time. So thank you for being open about that, because you feel better when you hear that people are kind of the same boat that you are. So thanks for getting on the boat with everybody. So the last question is one of kind of looking forward. It's going to be a while before we emerge out of kind of the COVID time. We're months still into this thing. How do you imagine the advancement profession might change permanently from the things, the obstacles, the challenges that you all have faced on your team, in your universities? Where do you think that this profession is going to navigate, where they're going to navigate to, where it's going to, what are going to be the positives that come out, and what might be the negatives that come out? Oh, we've stumped them, I think.
Well, I'll jump in. Just I actually think about this a lot. I don't know why, but it's interesting to me. I referenced it earlier. I think that a lot of what we do, I think there will be this massive pendulum swing back to being in front of people. I think people will jump on airplanes. I think there will be lots of travel. I think people are going to be hungry to get in front of prospects and have conversations. But I think what we've done, and this has been our theme throughout, is we need to exit this better than we were before. So we need to develop skills that we can use going into the future that will be beneficial to the work that we do. So I think the pluses are, I think we come out of this more creative. I think we find ways to use different tools along the way that can augment what we do. Yes, I'm going to meet with you face to face, but I might bring a Zoom call in and you'll talk to one of our trustees while we meet face to face. Or maybe I can be in a Zoom conversation about something and I'll have the football coach join me. I just think that we're finding new ways to bring other people into the conversation, and we're not afraid of technology as much as we used to. Now, I say we, the people like me who are of advanced age, different than the millennials who do this stuff falling off a log. But I think what we're going to find is we're going to be more diverse in the way that we approach our interactions, because we're going to have more tools at our fingertips. And the only negative that just jumps out at me quickly is what schools, what institutions are we going to lose because this environment has crushed them? And it makes, every school has its purpose and its place, and is the reason why somebody becomes a great success. And it's just sad to imagine that we're probably going to lose hundreds, maybe dozens, or maybe hundreds of schools through this process. So, but I'm excited about our skill set and what we're learning and what we're going to be able to do better.
I can't add a lot to what Kelly said. I think it's exactly what I would have said. I think, I think we used to look at technology as like, the holy grail that fixed everything. And I think now, to the point about we'll do more in person, I think we'll maybe try to put it in its proper place, because you can get carried away with the bells and whistles, but you cannot replace what we do by Zoom. So we'll think about it as, the accompaniment that it should be, the empowerment, resource and augmentation that it should be. I think there'll be that. And I think things that maybe, now a lot of institutions are doing things, with analytics, with targeting how they're connecting to people and using technology in that way. But some schools are still shying away from that. I think more and more institutions will look at those things now and think, okay, wait a minute. And now I get, what these things really mean or can mean to an organization, why investing in them is not a fool's errand, or, will always be, this will always be about the face-to-face. But, again, this is the rightful role of things like this in helping us do our jobs even better. And so I think a lot of places, places that I've been, Rice is not really like this. We've always been, I think, and I owe it to my predecessor, forward thinking about how we could use certain things. Not that we were like on the, front end of everything, but, pretty open-minded. But I think more places will be more open-minded to what's out there, the resources, the tools. I mean, you asked us what tools we're using with our team, but certainly we have used more things. We just had our virtual homecoming, the platforms that we use for that, the tools that we use for that, the, doing things with augmented reality and, stuff to engage people and try to make a sense of connectedness and community. Those are things that would have been harder to get people to think were necessary before. And I think people are just have a more, a better perspective on, what they can do and why, what they should invest in, the things that, really can replace people if you think that's what you should do, or the things that just make your people, that much more effective in the work that they do. So I guess bottom line is I think we will just appreciate what we do that is organic even more, and try to, elevate that as opposed to maybe supplant it with technology. So that's what I think is going to change.
Well, thank you. Thanks again for all of your answers today. We're kind of coming to the end of our time that we had allotted. We appreciate so much that you have spent your time with us. We thank you for sharing your wisdom today. And we really hope that our audience enjoyed our conversation with Kathi and Kelly. Thanks to Greg for being a great partner.
Very kind. Can I just add one thing before you wrap up completely? Thank you personally. I just want to say thank you to both Kelly and Kathi for doing this. And Kathi, on some future podcast, you're going to have to tell us the story of your evolution from cell and molecular biologist to advancement leader. It must be a fascinating story that I would love to hear. So anyway, that's a for another time.
I thought you were going to say I have to tell you how I have a Duke degree and I'm a huge UNC.
That's probably 2 podcasts.
That is 2 podcasts.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much today. You'll be able to find this podcast and our other podcast, Navigating Advancement Career Post-COVID, at our Whit Kiefer webpage at whitkiefer.com or on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere you might listen to your podcast. Thanks again so much for today. We wish you the best and we hope that you all stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks to you both. Really appreciate it.
Great talking with you. Thanks. And Kelly, thank you.
Good to be with you, Kathi.
Thank you for tuning in. We invite you to visit whitkiefer.com to learn more about our expertise in leadership and view our open searches. You can follow Whit Kiefer on our socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at Whit Kiefer. Whit Kiefer makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. Reliance on the information provided in this podcast is undertaken at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Third-party materials or the contents of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Whit Kiefer. Whit Kiefer assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein. Whit Kiefer makes no warranty that this podcast or the server that makes it available is free of viruses, worms, or other elements or codes that manifest contaminating or destructive properties. Whit Kiefer expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use this podcast or the information presented in this podcast.